Welcome to the movement. Welcome to the mission. Welcome to the place where truth don't get sugar-coated. And just so you know, it's a good day to be a soldier.
All right, so what's going on, YouTube? Listen, it's been a whole lot of talk with regards to this birthright citizenship, man, and I just think that there's a whole lot of people who are out here who are scared with regards to what's going on for no reason. Listen, white supremacy is one thing, and I'm not saying that it don't exist. It still exists. Honestly, it does, right? But you can't be afraid of white supremacy for you to get along in your life. White supremacy has its place, man. No matter how influential a person may feel that they are to the mechanisms of this nation, there's no need to be afraid, right? And I'm gonna bring you up to this fear mongering of black people, right? And a whole lot of other people like to throw out there when it comes to this whole regards to birthright citizenship and this whole Trump movement. I'm sorry I froze, right? But listen, one thing's for sure. If Trump wanted to get rid of you, black people, right, he would try to repeal the 14th Amendment all within itself. That's first of all. But he's not trying to do that. He's actually trying to use what your ancestry had accomplished in the making of the 14th Amendment, because there's no way to take it up out the history. We had a whole civil war with regards to it. And if it wasn't for the Scott case, which kind of initiated the whole thing, the Civil War, that is, then this country wouldn't be what it is today. So there is no reason to be really scared. The dynamics that come to play is that, man, first and foremost, man, you have got to just realize that you have just got to do you and continue to do you. And yes, black people do need to get their stuff together in terms of unity, but we are not going to be able to get our stuff together if, first of all, we have this whole idea of being afraid of white supremacy, so much so that it stops us from moving. So let's go over here, because we're going to get over here to this dude right here. And we're going to let them talk.
Challenge to President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship, a right that has been fundamental to this country for more than 150 years. The Trump administration is trying to revisit the meaning of the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment, which states, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Some of the justices seemed a little skeptical of the administration's arguments. Watch.
You say that the purpose of the 14th Amendment was to put all slaves on equal footing, newly freed slaves on equal footing, and so they would be citizens. But that's not textual.
8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution. I get the point, thinking about, gee, European countries don't have this, or most other countries, many other countries in the world don't have this. Doesn't that, I guess I'm not seeing the relevance as a legal, constitutional, interpretive matter.
How are we determining when or whether a newborn child is a citizen of the United States under your rule?
Trump himself was actually in the courtroom for the beginning of the hearing. It's the first time that a sitting president has attended oral argument. And afterward, he posted, "We are the only country in the world stupid enough to allow birthright citizenship," which is actually not true. But with that, I want to bring in the expert on all things.
Yeah, it definitely might not be true, right? However, we are probably 1 in 3 or 4 that actually grants birthright citizenship in the way we do, right? And what Trump is trying to get at to the point is that, hold on, it's not under its original intent. And these other countries have pretty much did this with under the guise or under the leadership of the United States, into where they have brought this whole idea of birthright citizenship just like the United States has, right? So the United States have pretty much taken leadership of the whole idea of birthright citizenship with which these countries has taken on themselves. But now we're going to get somebody else who at one point in time who sat on the Supreme Court and will kind of get at how the court should actually rule, right? And what she believes that the court should rule on. But she also makes a different point.
Constitutional Professor Melissa Murray of NYU Law School. She was a law clerk for Sonia Sotomayor on the federal bench before her nomination to the Supreme Court. Melissa is also the author of The U.S. Constitution, a comprehensive and annotated guide to the modern reader, out next month. The rest of our nightcap panel is still here. Melissa, thanks so much for joining. I want to start with laying out the administration's case. What are they basing their argument on, and how do they propose we decide who is a citizen?
Well, Catherine, it's a pretty broad claim, one that 10 years ago would have been deemed the province of kooks and cranks, but with careful stewarding and just real persistence, the administration has managed to make this off-the-wall theory on the wall and to debut it at the Supreme Court today. Basically, the point that they are making is that the 14th Amendment was intended to repudiate the Supreme Court's decision in 1857's Dred Scott versus Sanford, which said that African Americans could never be citizens of the United States. It is true that the 14th Amendment repudiated Dred Scott and made citizens of those born in the United States. But the administration goes further to say that because it was meant to repudiate Dred Scott, it was never intended to address the question of whether those who were in the United States but not subject to the United States jurisdiction, and they group immigrants in this category, whether the children of those immigrants could be citizens. And that's the whole question here. The principle of birthright citizenship is one that's been ingrained in our history. As you say, it's been recognized since 150 years ago with the 14th Amendment, but it was actually recognized even earlier. It's a vestige of the Anglo-American legal tradition that was adopted by the colonists at the time of the founding. So Dred Scott was a departure from it. The 14th Amendment corrected it. And when the 14th Amendment was debated, they debated the fact that immigrants were in their midst. There had been an influx of Irish immigrants in the 1840s, Chinese immigrants in the 1850s. They were living with immigration, and the framers of the 14th Amendment talked seriously about whether a grant of birthright citizenship would also include the children of those foreign-born nationals.
So, Melissa,
the difference is that these individuals were considered white, right? And so it denied the black people with the right to citizenship, unlike white people, right? As long as your skin was as long as your skin was white, you had the ability to earn citizenship in this country, right? It was the black people who was the focus of the Dred Scott case, which wouldn't be allowed to earn citizenship in this country after being after being in this soil and having no allegiance to any African country. Not only did they not know where from Africa from which they came, right, but because they had been in America for such a long period, right, you cannot definitely say that they still had an allegiance to any African country, right? And this is why you have the 14th Amendment, right? This is why the Dred Scott case is being repudiated. It's because these individuals, they couldn't say that they had an allegiance to the country. So when you draw back to it and you get an understanding of, and she goes into this, right, that this could have been this argument could have been made before Trump. This argument could have been made in an earlier case before Trump, but it's Trump who definitely at this moment is bringing it up, because when you look at it, it was to attack the whole idea that black people can never have access to full citizenship of this country, right? I'm gonna let her continue real fast.
watching the hearing today, did anything in particular stick out to you?
Well, one thing that stuck out to me was that, yes, the administration got a real drubbing from the court. Although Cecilia Wang, who argued on behalf of the ACLU and these immigrant plaintiffs, also got some questioning from a very hot bench. So both sides, I think, got it pretty good here. But I really want to emphasize that this is not a case that the court needed to hear. As you've noted, earlier last year, they took up the whole question of whether or not the nationwide injunction should be used as a remedy for addressing unconstitutional violations. And it was in the context of a challenge to this executive order. The court at that time could have addressed this substantive question of the meaning of the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment, as the plaintiffs in that case asked them to do. And they declined to do so. They declined to settle the issue when they could have done so a year ago. And so we have been living with this uncertainty for more than a year. I mean, again, the court is to blame for this because it's a pretty clear issue that's settled by very clear text in the Constitution. And the president and his administration are basically like Gretchen Wiener from Mean Girls, trying to make fetch happen. And the court a year ago could have been Regina George and said, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so as she states, man, this is not even Donald Trump's fault, right? And while they looking like the mean individuals who particularly are trying to attack the essence of the 14th Amendment and how it was enacted, they just looking like the mean people. But this is something that the court could have brought up a long time ago, and they definitely didn't. But because they didn't brought it up, this is why this is an issue today. So it's not Donald Trump's a fault. He is the person that is saying like, hold on, look, let's go back and let's look at the original intent and why this law was enacted. And the court could have did this a year ago, but they failed to do so. So like she says, the Supreme Court is to blame for this whole issue. I'm gonna let her go ahead and go on to some of these panelists, right? Because, right, when you look at the 14th Amendment, and it states that for Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the states wherein they reside. So here they brought up two separate issues where, okay, you can have citizenship with regards to a state and you can have citizenship with regards to the United States. But the Supreme Court or the argument didn't make a clear separation from the two, right? Because you from the state jurisdiction or the United States as a whole jurisdiction. So what do I mean by a state? I mean a state like California. I mean a state like Utah. I mean a state like New York. I mean a state like Colorado, right? But they didn't draw a complete. They bonded kind of like the two concepts together to not separate that whole idea, right? However, still, when you look at let me allow y'all to get a closer look. When you look at this, all persons born are naturalized in the United States. So here it is, right? It's like saying you got to be born, right? All persons born are naturalized. One of the justices brought up a great idea yesterday with regards to this whole issue. Is okay then, if we're going to determine allegiance to the nation, why don't we have a look at allowing a process for allowing the determination if these people are going to have allegiance to the country by allowing them to become naturalized citizens first, right? Before we can determine their allegiance to the country. That was a great point because instead of allowing individuals who come over here, first of all, illegally and this are through birthright tourism and just being a visitor and to say that they have allegiance to the country, then it completely thwarts the whole idea of what it is to be a United States citizen. And here lies the problem to where the interpretation of the law has to be determined is because, like Donald Trump says, we have people in this country who don't have a true passion for the country and have a passion for the country in which they came. And here lies the problem in which the court has to address, right? Should that individual have domicile? Should they be permanent residents? Because even in the Wong Kim Ark case, right, which allows undocumented illegal immigrants the path of citizenship, once they have, those children who are born to them, right? A citizen grants them citizenship. Even in the Wong Kim Ark case, what happened was his parents went back to China. His parents went back to China. Wong Kim Ark went back to visit China, came back to the United States, and that's when he got stopped by whatever officials at that time. It was probably, I think it was Customs, whatever the name of that department was. It was something about Customs and Patrol or something like that, whatever. However, and they detained him because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese Exclusion Act did not allow Chinese citizens to become United States citizens. And that was by law, pretty much, right? And so what Wong Kim Ark did was thwart that. It denied that whole idea of domicile, which is permanent residence in the United States. You don't intend it on going back. You don't intend of having allegiance to another country, or that you don't intend to have another country be your primary residence, but yet you primarily choosing to stay in this nation. And in all actuality, what is supposed to happen is at that point, you're supposed to file for application. You know what I'm saying? For citizenship. An application for citizenship means that the United States has to absolutely grant you. It's a reciprocal relationship to where the United States has to accept you as a citizen, but first you have to ask, and that is renouncing your allegiance to the other country. Right? You could do the same thing when it comes to denouncing your own citizenship in the United States. You could file application to denounce your citizenship in the United States. But first you have to file application to say that I renounce my citizenship from this other country, from this foreign land in which I was originally born, right? And I want my domicile to be in the United States. And this whole idea of domicile is what the Trump administration is trying to argue in this new case, which is Barber versus Donald Trump. How important domicile is to the whole theory of the 14th Amendment.
You have won me over many times with your Mean Girls reference. Basil, so just...
I haven't seen Mean Girls.
You, what?
No, I know.
Neither have I.
We have to rectify that after the show tonight. We're going to stick around and watch. Okay. But that's neither here nor there.
Millennial rage.
Exactly. Basil, Justice Amy Coney Barrett referred to the idea that ending birthright citizenship could lead to messy disputes over parental status and citizenship. What do you make of that comment?
I mean, it's beyond messy, right? I mean, you're throwing the entire country into chaos. Nobody's talking. Let me say what I want to say about this point, because the reality is, and Melissa's right. You know, these are conversations that included immigrants at the time, whether they be Irish, Italian, but even though immigrants at that country at that point in time were sort of ridiculed and deemed not American. Somewhere in the 1920s, whiteness was consolidated in our country. And therefore, whatever white you were, it was us, it was them against us. And the us is Black, it's Latino, it's Asian. And to me, this is a direct result of the president doing his let's test everything doctrine as a result of elevating constituencies in this country that have the most extreme points of view, including the belief that we've got to now rid our country of people that don't look like us, that don't talk like us, so on and so forth.
And see, this is why at this point, both Asians and Hispanic people should be upset at themselves, right? Because if you really wanted to thwart off the whole idea of Black supremacy, what you should have did, you should have aligned yourself with Black people. But you didn't do that. This is a time to where you should consider that the fact that if you really thought instead of aligning yourself with white people, right, which pretty much, already had the first class in America, in the United States of America, because they, first of all, they knocked out the Indians, right? They established this country, being immigrants themselves, as their sovereign nation, right? Because the United States is a nation of immigrants, but it's a nation of, the whole idea and the concept come from European immigrants, not from no other country, right? The Immigration Act of 1965, right, is pretty much what allowed other nations to come in, or people from other cultures to come in terms of being immigrants, to be identified in terms of citizenship, and the Immigration and Nationality Act as well, to an extent, right? But at this moment, after what he just said, this is why Asian people at this moment and Hispanic people need to be kind of upset at themselves. As Hispanic people, they pretty much align themselves with white people in terms of census, all right? And it wasn't until recently to where white people pretty much decided that, nah, y'all not us, that they were labeled Hispanics in terms of the census, right? So here is the separation of where, hold up, you can't be upset at black people when all this time we've been like, come on this side. Come mess with us. And you guys didn't. Who is to blame for all this? You know what I'm saying? We understood we've been through the whole ideas and the dynamics of white supremacy. We've been trying to be on our own to live just like and have equal treatment just like the white man wants to have in this nation, right? This is not nothing new. This is why you have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We've been trying to have that equal treatment, just like leave us alone type treatment. Like, don't hate when you see us become successful. And it always regarded economics. We regard racism as economics, not allowing us the ability to thrive into this nation. That's where we stem economics, because in other words, we don't really care. If you allowing us to thrive economically, then we are going to have equal footing with you, right? But all the Immigration Act in 1965 did was create a communication barrier between white people and black people, and it created a greater economic gap between white people and black people. And it allowed the immigrant, Hispanic, Asian, primary beneficiaries of the Immigration Act of 1965, the ability to have access into this country economically. So much so that it's reaching a boiling point to where, okay, the cup is getting too full with all these other nations, and it's looking like we are not having the same nation in which these particular people, this old guard, the oldest generation in this nation, always knew. And we see that the recent dynamics that have changed within the city of Los Angeles. We talk about that so much. It's crazy that within the last 20 years, how much the demographics have shifted. I'm gonna let him continue because it's just like he's just so scared of white supremacy that it's like, okay, it has been a thing. I don't deny that. But if you keep up to where your ancestors wanted freedom from government, wanted freedom to be their complete selves, whether on economic footing, whether to espousing all creativity that they have in the freedoms that they now have, there is no need to be afraid of white supremacy when at this moment in time, economically, the more you are successfully, the greater you are to the nation. At this point in time, white people want you to be successful. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they daunting on your success. They want you to be successful. They are waiting for the black person to come back into this nation and be the black person that they remember, right? And that's hardworking, entrepreneurial, conservative. And this is another reason why you need to understand that, you know, your ancestors, black people, primarily voted Republican, not Democrat. Democrats try to control you. And it's all based on this whole theory of killing down white supremacy, right? They want to be able to control your votes. They are the party of control. They're going to find some way to control you. How do we control them enough to make them vote for us in the next election?
Yeah, I mean, Greg Bovino said that he had a plan to deport 100 million people, which is like a third of the population.
So all of this is connected, right? These things aren't happening in silos. All of this is connected. Also consider the fact that the president has ended temporary status for a lot of different people who've come here, but he's put out the red carpet for white South Africans, refugees. Are you kidding me? So to me, this is very clear. This is about trying to define what it is to be an American. And that definition largely does not include people that look like me. And that is
it derives from culture, okay, with the assimilation that has happened in this nation when it comes to black people. It regards to culture, not necessarily skin color, right? Listen, Somalia has a different culture. People from the southern border have different cultures, right? Now, people from South Africa may have different cultures and still as well. But it's another thing with South Africa where South Africans are, the white South Africans are, they still haven't gotten over apartheid and kind of need a place to go while black people kind of want their land back over there, right? And after gaining access are being cut out for so long in their own country, right? So it's like, okay, well, we're not going to allow that to happen, right, over there. But their culture is good enough to where we don't feel like they'd be a threat into the United States if they were to come over to the United States. That's what this regards. It regards the culture of a nation, right? Culture plays the part to where, you know, of this whole idea when it came to the original for, you know, Italians, Irish, all these other European nations, while Italian and Irish wasn't considered to be a part of citizenship at first, right? Even Asians, right? Black people had to be considered because we had been over here so long. We understood the white people more in this nation more than anybody, right? We had become so closely aligned in terms of how the country operates and how the country actually, what the country kind of agenda was, right? And understanding of the system that assimilation was there. We had already fought in the Revolutionary War. After the Dred Scott case, we had helped so much in the economy, other than making of this nation, to make this nation so prosperous in terms of what it is today, that it was kind of impossible to say that assimilation couldn't be key for black people. Assimilation was the right thing to do, especially after the Dred Scott case, especially after the Civil War, right? To where black people reunited the nation by going into battle against the Democratic Party.
As I said, a direct result of this president and the party that he belongs to elevating the most fringe parts of our country and mainstreaming them. And so you get what we have now. And, you know, I go to what Cheryl and I, who used to run LDF, said, you know, earlier, that the president is in that courtroom making sure that the people he appointed do his bidding and testing the to the limits of presidential power. That's how far he's going to go to make the country that he wants to make.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how effective he'll be at getting
correct,
bidding,
but right.
Yeah.
I think the other question that comes up too is how do you define citizenship in the United States? I mean,
That's right.
We've heard J.D. Vance talk about lineage back to the Civil War as being maybe the legitimate, way in which we define who's a citizen. Can you trace your ancestry back to 1865?
I mean, which is not good for his wife, whose parents are immigrants.
It's not good for the president's three children.
Or J.D. Vance's children, or the president's children.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Hayes, we've been talking about how this is part of the broader picture of Trump's immigration policies. And I guess I'm wondering, given how unpopular the president's immigration agenda has proved, if you look at polling, it is terrible. I do kind of wonder how the general population, to the extent it's paying attention to something like these Supreme Court hearings, how normal people are interpreting all of this. Like, is it as offensive and odious and alienating as Basil laid out, or I don't know, is it just washing over?
I think that to the extent that people are paying attention to it, they're the ones who really care. I feel like they are heated about it. They are fired up about it. I think for a lot of people, though, it's just unfathomable. Like, not only is it the question of how would this even work if we were to take away birthright citizenship, what does that look like? I think that at oral arguments, one of the points that John Sauer made was that, if there's a question at the time of birth about parentage, then the parent can just sue the Social Security Administration to easy peasy. And meanwhile, that child is for months in limbo. That baby is for months in limbo, not able to get proper health care, not able to get proper services. If they are a child that does need access to, like, WIC, for example, and the mother needs access to WIC, they won't be able to get that during those months. So I think for a lot of people, this is so outside of the norm of what we were taught, outside of the norm of what we've come to understand as how to be an American. I think for a lot of people, until we see those sort of things come into actual effect, it'll just be either sort of noise, sort of theory that we'll never have to grapple with.
I think one of the greatest ironies, too, is this happens in a period where we've had net out-migration of individuals for the first time since the 1930s and a baby bust going on at the same time, where there's 1.6 women born to 1.6 children, born to a woman, which is below the population replacement rate. So we're playing with fire demographically here in the United States.
And that's always been the argument, right? It's this whole playing with fire with regards to the demographic of the United States when it comes to the low childbearing that we've been having within, the last recent years. You probably get 1.5 child for each American, right? And I just think it's a thing of economics, to where if the parents are doing better off, then they will more likely want to produce more children. If the economy and if the cost of living is increasing, here they're not going to want to produce more children, because who wants to leave a child behind, primarily by themselves, and being the only child being raised. So it's a thing of, how did feminism play in that, to where you want to see more individual and women into the workforce, right? And how did so many other things play, right? Just not feminism. I'm not attacking women, right? But women needed to be in the workforce was a thing at one time, because what you had their husbands going off into war, and it gave them opportunity to be in the workforce and show a passion for the country, while their husbands was out there fighting in some type of war. And so here we go. We have this fear mongering going on with regards to Donald Trump, when all Donald Trump is asking the Supreme Court to do is, listen, go back and do what you didn't do at first a year ago. Go back and answer this question. And the question that needs to be answered right now with regards to the Supreme Court is, under this whole idea of the original intent of the original intent of the citizenship clause as it was when the 14th Amendment had came out. And so it was ratified in 1868. And the original intent was this whole idea with regards to the subject of the jurisdiction, right? And what Wong Kim Ark did was kind of extend it for illegal immigrants as it being for just a piece of the soil. You were born on this soil, and here you are, because you have kind of like rights to soil. Here you are because you were born here. You have rights to soil. Well, that becomes an issue, and the Supreme Court, I don't expect them, unless they dissent on it, to identify with this, right? And the Congress will have to go back and do a better job of initiating some type of, or codifying some type of way that determines what subject of the jurisdiction is. It should be codified. It should be that domicile, that it must mean some type of permanent legal residency, because domicile, it was the key issue with regards to the arguments on the Trump side, while the Wong Kim Ark case leaves out this whole theory of domicile, because all persons born, right? That whole idea of all persons born. But the original intent was that the subject of the jurisdiction was to mean that people who owed full allegiance to the country, right? And this is this Trump argument that these people don't have full allegiance to this country, right? And how could a person have full allegiance to the country if their parents don't have full allegiance to the country? If something like happens to where it's like Wong Kim Ark parents, when it goes back to China, right? After coming to America, being able to get the economic benefits of America, of the United States, right? The economic benefits for not only themselves but for America as well. Then after they have, pretty much felt like, okay, we got enough. We've helped America out with its economy, but we also took the opportunity to help ourselves. And as such, now we have the opportunity to where we feel comfortable in going back, and we don't have to suffer from the economy of whatever China was going through at that time, right? We can go back to China, and we can, pretty much live our lives in our own nation and be happy. And see, this is a problem with allegiance, to where if the parents don't have allegiance to the country, then how is the child supposed to have allegiance to the country? How is the child supposed to have allegiance to the country when at any time they are under the care of the parents? They are under that authority of the parents, to where their allegiance is tied to the parents. And see, this is where it's getting confusing now with birthright citizenship, because allegiance has to fall from the parent, right? Because that child was under the authority of the parent. So, I don't know how the Supreme Court is definitely going to rule on it. I thought it would pretty much be like a 5-4 issue, because when you look at the original intent of birthright citizenship, subject to the jurisdiction, absolutely means full allegiance to this country. It does not mean dual citizenship. It does not mean anything else. Black people had full allegiance to the country after being over here for such a long period of time, right? And it's fitting to go back to the historical analysis of the 14th Amendment without it being undertaken under the whole idea in 1898 with regards to the Wong Kim Ark case, which completely leaves out the whole idea of domicile. Domicile means permanent residency. That's why, if anything, if the Wong Kim Arts gets overturned, modified, or anything like that, it's going to be for that reason, because it leaves out the whole idea of domicile. If you would put back the whole intent of domicile, which is permanent residency within this country, right? And how do you establish permanent residency? You apply for a naturalized citizenship. That's why when whatever justice it was, I think it was Justice Alito who brought up this whole idea of, so why don't we allow these individuals to make a good determination of whether they are going to allow the United States to have its primary residence. Why don't these people wait to these people to be considered natural citizens before we consider their child to be citizens? Important question, right? That process has to be done through Congress, and Congress has to act on that, right? But in terms of the original intent of the 18th Amendment, of the 14th Amendment, that was established in 1868, you cannot leave out domicile, or you cannot leave out the whole idea of subject of the jurisdiction, which brings in to the matter of full allegiance to this country. So you cannot be a birth tourist. You cannot be an immigrant in this nation who comes over and crosses the border, all right, has a child, when it was always expected that you were going to go back to Mexico, right? Or you were always going to go back to Guatemala, or you always were going to go back to Africa, that you were only over here temporarily. That's not full allegiance. Black people coming out of slavery had full allegiance to the country. And this is where I think Donald Trump will get a win. This is a question that the Supreme Court should have asked, or should have completed a year ago, but they didn't. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live Show, man. Always remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Listen, there is no need to be afraid of white supremacy at this moment, right? Why? Because now you have an idea of how much black people has done for this country, that there is no denying that you are meant to be in this nation. What needs to happen is the idea that we have got to get our mindset on our objective. That meant, okay, just like they particularly don't see us, and the only time they really see us is if we're doing well. But, with the attitude that is in the nation right now, so many people want you to do well, want you to be successful. All you got to do is grasp towards that success. It's a good day to be a soldier.
We are the essence of God's image. We are the representation of God's love for his creation.